And now we've got to talk about President Trump because the former president just had what I honestly have to call a Biden moment where he sounded like the current president very frequently does, and Trump doesn't super often, but occasionally does. Trump sounded really old and confused and meandering when asked a very simple question about childcare policy at an event this week. Let's take a look at this clip.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. I was somebody, we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that, because look, childcare is childcare. There's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about by taxing foreign nations at levels that they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly. And it's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we're talking about, including childcare, that it's going to take care. We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within a fairly short period of time, coupled with the reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all of the other things that are going on in our country. Because I have to stay with childcare. I want to stay with childcare, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about. We're going to be taking in trillions of dollars, and as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people. But we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. So we'll take care of it. Thank you. Very good question. Thank you.
I'm sorry, y'all, but what the was that? He did not answer the question in like 2 full minutes. He did not mention any specific legislation or specific policies to reduce childcare costs, which is what he was asked about. And then he goes on this long, meandering word salad for 2 minutes about deficits and trade. And if you look at it written out in the transcript, it's like a peak Kamala word salad times 10. I mean, that's the thing for me. I don't think Trump is like cognitively declined in the same way as Biden. I do think he's old, and I do actually think he's lost his step, but I don't think it's on the same scale as Biden. But I do just want to, for consistency's sake, highlight this kind of thing for you guys, because if Biden or Kamala gave a similar answer, mainstream conservative media, the Fox Newses of the world, would be all over it, but they don't really highlight the same thing for Trump. And that is just as nonsensical a word salad as I have seen Kamala do. In fact, it's probably right there, up there with her greatest hits. So I think in the spirit of fairness, you guys know I try to be an honest onlooker. I try to call balls and strikes. I have to point this out for you, that he is also not exactly giving the sharpest answers all the time. Okay, and he has his own penchant for word salad. But on the substance here, because I have listened to this probably 3 times now, and I could parse what he was saying eventually, especially when I read it as a transcript. What he's essentially saying is, okay, we'll take care of childcare somehow. He gives no specifics, with spending money that we'll raise through tariffs, which are taxes put on imported goods coming from outside the country into America. Now, the problem with that is not just the very word salady way he phrased it, but the idea itself makes very little sense. Because in reality, in practical effect, tariffs increase the prices that American consumers have to pay for the goods they need. So if you were to do this, if you were to fund some sort of government childcare program or assistance or subsidy to increase the affordability through taxes raised through tariffs, Americans would just have to pay for it with higher grocery prices, with higher gas prices, with higher prices for furniture, with higher construction prices for housing, because all the imported goods would go up in cost because we import so many things as part of our economic supply chains from other countries. So how does that help? They'd just be paying for it in a different way. It doesn't, to me, actually provide any solution. And there are actually economically conservative ways to ameliorate the insane cost of childcare. But unfortunately, there's not a ton of federal solutions for that. So Trump doesn't have a ton to actually offer up of substance because most of that's on the state and local level. We have very onerous regulations that increase the cost. I'll put a link to some great work from the Cato Institute on this issue. But there are places that require college degrees to work in a daycare center, or even require high school diplomas or secondary credits, some college education. And you don't need that to take care of a child, right? It's just nonsensical, and it increased the costs by limiting the pool of workers and limiting the supply. They've also got onerous zoning requirements that make home daycares very difficult to offer in some places. So they do lots of things to reduce the supply of daycare, which of course then leads to higher prices. And then also places have $15, $17, $20 minimum wages. Well, labor costs are the biggest input into childcare prices in most places. So in the big cities where you have really high minimum wages, you're going to have very expensive daycare as well, kind of defeating the point to some extent. So yeah, it's a complicated issue. There aren't a ton of easy answers for a federal politician to offer in terms of how to address it that won't just make the problem worse. But what Trump said there was not a solution. And in the spirit of fairness, I feel the need to highlight when he has his word salad senior moments too, because Joe Biden and Kamala definitely have them more frequently, but they're not alone. And personally, I do kind of wish we had just across the board younger and more coherent people at the top of our politics. You guys let me know what you think of this clip from Trump in the comments below, and do hit that like button while you're at it.